Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and I'm preparing to check in on my mixed bin of worms, and if you've been following along then you'll know that in that one system, this one system, I already have it here on the bench, we've been having just a heck of a time trying to control the number of springtails in here. It's been 15 days since we last checked in here, and we've been really applying a strategy of trying to use neem meal or neem seed meal, neem cake, or neem oil. And we did the whole neem routine for many feedings. And I was starting to think that maybe on this particular occasion we would transition entirely over to the new strategy that we started implementing a few weeks ago, which was drying. So let's turn the attention of the camera down here to the bin so we can dig in and see what's going on. The drying approach was really only nothing more than leaving plastic coverings off, which had been on here for a long time. And as you saw a moment ago, we had newspaper, and on top of that, piece of paper bag. So, do we have springtails? I definitely see we've got mites. Those little tiny specks, I believe, are mites, or maybe they're the springtails. Springtails were all over the place. And so many people have even commented already, saying that for what worked for them was drying, and that's really what I'm after here. I can already see, it's usually right after I sort of skim back a very thin layer of the uppermost material, that I could see right away that they're still scattered all over throughout the material at all different depths, all the way almost right down to the bottom. So we're definitely in Springtail City here still. I'm actually now combing through the section of the bin that we've been feeding now for, I got a whole bunch of information in here that we could check out. So 170 days down here is what I was going to refer to as the amount of time that we've been orienting this bin's setup in such a way that it only gets fed on this far end where I'm examining the material, where after 14 days I wouldn't really expect to see many leftovers. I think the feedings that we've been giving them have been meant to be somewhat mundane and not all juicy and delicious, so they've been pretty much getting like just coffee and maybe some worm chow, I think, is what the feedings have consisted of. Usually a little bit of bedding of some sort to go along with it, just in case they need it. And over here on the very far edge is where that would have been placed in. I was just starting to think that, we could keep on that route, but I thought that maybe switching things up a little bit here would be worthwhile. So before I put this aside and we really get down into it, the age of the bin is 282 days. And believe it or not, this system was started with what we estimated to be 36 worms. It started out as a puny little population in a smaller container, and they lived in that smaller container for their 112 days up until they got to a large enough number. At that point, it seemed like it was fitting to get them a larger container. And the feeding today is feeding number 24. So we're getting up there. 280 days. We're 2 days over 40 weeks of age. And for a greater amount of time than the system ran in the little container, now we've a considerably greater amount of time we've been kind of in this wedge pattern. And I guess the wedge pattern is, maybe one of the many ways to think about it. Some people, I think, just continue it as like a continuous flow sort of a setup where you keep adding new things to this side, never adding anything new to this side, and over time what ends up on this side is only the most broken down materials. So I think my idea here today was to grab some of this stuff off the top surface, which has been somewhat neglected by being out here on the dry end of things on the surface, trying to help us get to a more manageable point. We'll dump that in as the foundation for today's feeding. And then besides the coffee, so the coffee is always sort of an ever-present thing that needs to go into the worm bin, so it's no surprise. Finally back to the proper type of filter that belongs in my coffee maker. I was using those round cup-shaped ones for the longest time, only because I ran out of the kind that the machine actually takes, and then I sort of jury-rigged a way of getting the other filters in there, dependably, because I had a bunch of those other filters laying around, so I figured let's just adapt to what's available. But now those ran out, so it was back to getting the proper type of coffee filter, these cone-shaped ones for the coffee machine. So I think it's only been coffee feedings for this bin, so hopefully a little treat of some yummy potato that's been frozen, so as it thaws I believe it'll get pretty mushy and the worm should be able to take advantage of it as a nice starchy meal. And let's see, a little bit more worm chow. What do you think? Should we, as far as bedding goes, I don't think we're going to need any more bedding. We can even cover up with some of this dry stuff on the surface. But maybe just another little dusting of the worm chow just to really sweeten the deal. Alright, so let's see here. Figure maybe grab a little bit more of this dry stuff to go down into the feeding area. And I got to admit, potatoes aren't bringing with them a great deal of moisture, making me wonder if it would be to our advantage. Even though drying is the name of the game here to try to get rid of the springtails, I believe that the feeding zone is not going to be very appealing to any potential visitors if it's not damp enough to suit their basic requirements. So I'm just going to make sure we've dropped a good bit of moisture to hopefully soak down into that dry material we sprinkled down into the bottom, and then they'll be able to come over and partake in that delicious coffee and potato snack that we just prepared for them. And I think we can start covering up, and I believe in the process what we could do also is sort of examine how the rest of the system is coming along as far as springtails go. For us to have actually, examined the side of the bin that is getting fed and is given moisture deliberately, it's not surprising that the springtails are there, but who knows, maybe over on the more dry side where we've not fed ever since they've been living in this container now for the past 170 days. That's all just the material that came over from their old environment. So yeah, there's still a good number of little bits of white speck in here, suggesting springtails are still present in great numbers. Not even suggesting, I mean obviously showing that we're still dealing with springtails galore. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think, I'm going to keep the rest of what I have of that neem cake. We used quite a bit in here to pretty much no avail, so I figured let me just hang on to what I've got instead of just tapping myself out and having none and never even achieving the objective that I was trying to reach with it when I was using it heavily in here. Look at that, all these worms hanging out over on this side. I'm trying to get a read on the springtail quantities, definitely see them in pretty good numbers here and there. Especially sometimes you even hit a little pocket where there's even more of them. And as you can see, we've got way more than just 36 worms living in here. Which is pretty cool. Definitely seems like a nice, comfortable population. The material over here feels pretty good. In no way would I be able to say that it's too damp anymore, at least from a worm farmers or compost creators point of view. I would say that this stuff is just right in terms of having a nice moisture content, and as a result of it, a whole bunch of worms enjoying it. But still the ability to crumble readily as you chip away at it or as you handle it. So interesting how all the worms are in the most finished of the material in the bin. I think before we backfill, I'm just going to let these little guys dive down a bit. Then we'll be able to reveal them again as we level things off. Let's watch them squirm. I found myself staring at that one little worm right there. You too, maybe? All these other ones sort of vanished out of view, and I continued to see movement over there, and this little guy just almost made it to the edge, and then got scared back and went back to the middle of the coffee filter. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wait for him. Let's get this feeding wrapped up. We're pretty much done here. The departure now from our neem strategy that we've been using up until now. Going with full bore attempt at trying to see if simple drying of the system's contents might help us see a reduction in the springtail numbers. For now, I would still say that we're in a chronic sort of situation. Not that there's anything dire or anything to be concerned about, so I'm not worried. It's just that my preference would be a proportion of springtails in the system that is greatly less than what we're experiencing here. And, you know, I really like the way this newspaper, tucked all the way out to the very edge everywhere, is working as far as sort of a controlled drying. Very slow through both layers of paper, the newspaper as well as this paper bag on top. Obviously the double layer helps more, so around the edges it seems like it's getting a little bit more air and allowing for a little bit more drying. But I think if we continue at this rate, we might be able to just simply separate the worms from this material and let the springtails kind of have it until such a time that they don't want it anymore. Then I could use the castings in the garden somewhere. But maybe it is time to use the suggestion people have been making, is give them a bath, move them onto the new home or something like that. So whatever, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, we're done. So before I go, let me quickly just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.